Okay, guys, we've got some pretty freaking huge news here, actually. Well, if you're an investor or a board member of Hypergryph, I guess it's pretty huge, but I think it's interesting to talk about nonetheless, and that is that Arknights Endfield, the last stand in China, the revenue data is coming at 1.2 billion yuan, which is actually insane. That works out to around about $173 million, which is crazy. We saw the revenue come out not too long ago that showed that across mobile they're earned around $29 million, but we know that is an underestimated revenue chart anyway, because the way it calculates CN data, because we don't have the CN Android data, it has to be estimated, and it's usually a 1.7 times multiplication of the base number of iOS estimated earnings. And we know anyway that the Chinese market consists of around 75 to 80% Android anyway, so the idea that it would only be around 2x is probably incredibly conservative. But usually with estimations, it's a little bit better to go conservative than to overestimate. So we know that the mobile numbers was probably higher, but we're looking at just shy of a $200 million. And this news is coming from financescena.com. This is coming also from shobserver.com as well. We've got multiple outlets reporting this news, and this comes from the Zhuhai district, I believe, in Shanghai, and it's an official government account that's releasing this information. So if we look at this here on financescena.com, Arknights The Last Land revenue data at 1.2 billion yuan in revenue within the first 2 weeks of launch. PC sales accounted for nearly 60%. We know when it comes to games like Wuthering Waves that probably most people are playing on PC and console because they're just really not mobile games. They're not your traditional mobile game in the sense that they're just easy to use on a phone. They're available on phones. Of course they are. I was talking about this before. Are we going to start to see some of the bigger gacha games maybe start to potentially even leave mobile behind, or at least see it as a real secondary format now, when we're seeing games like Enfield show that domestically 60% of the player base is on PC, and apparently it goes even further. I don't know if it's on this post yet. Internationally, PC and PlayStation make up about 70% of the revenue, so the revenue we're actually seeing now for Arknights Endfield is the massive minority. And again, this goes for games like Wuthering Waves, and probably to a lesser extent Zenless Zone Zero, and even lesser extent Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact as well. So we talked about this in my last video, this idea of hidden revenue. Majority of the revenue for Arknights Endfield is actually hidden, which is fucking insane when you ask me. Like, I had some people in my Discord saying, because in my last video I mentioned a Bilibili post where the person had stated they reckon the game had raised around 111 million, and I was like, that sounds wild, because I think we were made like 140 million in its first month, or 110 million in its first month, which is crazy, right? I was like, there's no way it's made that sort of money in like a week or so. We're looking at half a month and they've made nearly $200 million. So today, according to the official government Shanghai Zhuhai, I think it's pronounced, Hypergryph's new game, Arknights Endfield, has achieved a total revenue of over 1.2 billion yuan across all platforms globally within 2 weeks of its global launch. These revenue figures likely far exceeded external and industry expectations. Like, I thought they might be looking at like 50-60 million. It may be over the month potentially. That's my thinking. And if they were seriously like overperforming, maybe like 100 million or something. But nearly 200 million in half of that time is obscene when you think about it. These games actually print ridiculous amounts of money. All we can hope from this, right, is this makes the game better. As somebody who does have critiques and worries, but worries that have been somewhat quelled about with certain side quests, but we'll have to see with the other side quests as well what my views is there, that we can get improvements in other areas. That money I want to see going back into the game, right? So What's more noteworthy, that the numbers in the revenue structure of the game, nearly 60% of revenue comes from PC in the domestic market, which is obviously China, and a combined 70% from PC and PlayStation in overseas markets. In the secondary game category, which has long been dominated by mobile devices, what you've got to take into account as well, it's mainly dominated by PC in China. Because the console market's a lot smaller over there. Because I think it's only been, I can't remember exactly, but for a while, I don't know if they were illegal, but the console purchases were like highly regulated or something, weren't they? So like it's a burgeoning market. So it's mainly PC and mobile players in CN, where obviously globally a lot of people are on console as well. So the game's been dominated by a PC master race by the looks of it, and then followed by the PlayStation market as well, which is really good to see. So which games have been long dominated by mobile devices, which we say, I said this not long ago, people call me crazy, that maybe we're going to start to see a shift in the gacha space. Not the dropping of the mobile space, so to speak, but it just becoming a bit more of a less important part of the space. It's always probably going to be there, and for some games, it's always going to be incredibly important, right? It's a massive market. I still believe the mobile market like dwarfs every other game market combined, right? So to ignore it totally is like silly. But this is, I think, really positive for us who enjoy playing on console and PC as well, because it means hopefully we'll start to see games get better and better and better as they are not held back by mobile devices, right? So which obviously they say this here, a high proportion of PC and console revenue often signifies a more significant expansion into new markets. Once again, I said this before Enfield launched. This was a game that was really going to be attempting to take the global market, right? Because when they first created Gryphline, a subsidiary of Hypergryph, and they decided not to go with a publisher like YoStar, that they were attempting to obviously take the global market a little bit more seriously. And then we saw all of the marketing over last year. They were serious about the global market, right? We had pop-ups, we had expos, we had massive marketing drives. We even had Lowlight attempting to do interviews in English, the little bits that he did to speak to the EN speaking market, which for somebody like me, it's really appreciative, right, when you see developers do that. Because obviously in the gacha space, typically, us global players, we are like considered secondary compared to the domestic market, which makes sense because it's a bigger market, right? But it's really positive to see prior to the launch that global was being considered an actual important part of their marketing structure. And we're starting to see now as well, by the looks of it. I would like to see the breakdown. I don't think this is in here. I would like to see the breakdown of what the entire revenue is, you know, how much of it is global, because looking at the mobile charts on the revenue chart, it was quite strong in global, right? So it's really good to see, because that means then that we obviously get treated well as well, right? So you can see from an industry perspective, the reason why this set of data is eye-catching is that in the past 2 years, the ACG, anime, comics, and games market has entered a stage of obvious competition for existing users, and user attention is highly fragmented, making it increasingly difficult for new products to achieve good results upon launch. Basically, that means there's a lot of shit out there, right? We're seeing more and more gacha games released because it's an incredibly profitable space. There's so much more competition now, not just in the more mobile-orientated games, but the more AAA-orientated games, right? You know, we've got your Genshins, your Zenlesses, your Wuthering Waves, your Arknights Endfield, your Honkai Star Rails. We've got Azure Premier coming, NTE. You know, all of these games are trying to get a part of this pie. And we did see as well last year there was actually a contraction in the market as well. So to actually come out swinging like this while the market's kind of shrinking, because, you know, the global scene at the moment isn't great for most people around the world. You know, inflation, you know, the risks of war, all this sort of stuff typically makes people spend less on things they don't need to necessarily spend money on. So, hey, this is really good for Hypergryph. Hopefully, this can be good for us who play the game, because hopefully the game just gets better and we get more cool stuff, right? Because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter how much money these games make, as long as we get a better game. This, I just thought was worth talking about, because this is insane. Actually insane. So So, secondly, it also reflects the structural inertia of domestic games market. According to 2025, the China Game Industry Report released the Game Publishing Committee. Mobile games accounted for 73% of domestic sales of revenue last year. So, it's kind of standalone in a sense, then, right? If 60% of the revenue of Enfield is PC in a market that's majorly, so to say, dominated by the mobile market, it shows that the game is definitely appealing to a certain demographic, or is being played by a certain demographic, should we say. So, sales revenue last year remaining absolutely mainstay. Client games accounted for approximately 22.28%. Most ACG games, content, products still heavily rely on the mobile platform to achieve significant scale, which, as I said, you know, makes sense. You know, the mobile market, not just in CN, globally, it's massive, right? But hopefully, you know, the growth in the PC market, in the PlayStation market, and the access to cheaper products, hopefully, once, you know, AI stops making everything ridiculously expensive, we can start to see maybe that market grow again. That's the only issue at the moment, right, is the massive cost for PC parts at the moment, and the shortage of chipsets and all that sort of stuff, and all the crap that goes on with that. That's kind of stifling the growth of the market at the moment. So hopefully we can see a return to normal prices and growth exploding again. So in this environment, well, the 1.2 billion yuan revenue generated by Arknights Endfield in 2 weeks is certainly important. The key is that the revenue growth points are largely located on PC and console platforms, nearly 60% in the domestic market, and 70% in overseas, which is PC and PlayStation. This is almost equivalent to attracting an additional group of PC and console users who have higher requirements for the complete experience, in addition to the traditional main battlefield of ACG, which is true. People who typically play on console and PC are going to demand a different experience, right? We're going to want a games game, right? There's been this whole argument around Enfield, right, of I have to play to get things in the game, where us who are used to playing games are kind of like, well, that's okay with me, right? I understand the time frame around the gacha and all that, so I get that, right? But we're happy to play games to get stuff out of them and to take our time with these games as well. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that sees the development of the game potentially change. If they go, okay, we didn't expect the market to be this saturated by PC and console players, so maybe it changes the roadmap a little bit in terms of like how they develop future products for the game, if you will, you know, because I'm assuming they had some ideas of the market share. I'm going to have a guess and say I don't think they expected 60% of the domestic market to be PC and 70% of the overseas market to be PlayStation and PC. You know, I expected most people to be spending there, but it's interesting to see, right? I wonder what that means for the future of something like Enfield and your Wooers and your Anantas and your NTEs and those sort of games, right? They just really are going to struggle on a lot of mobile devices. So, generally speaking, the higher the PC console ratio, the more product needs to withstand more pickish. Yeah, basically. Just what I just said. So they're basically saying what I just said. With it being on console and PC, it's going to require to be more of a game, right? You know, you're not going to be just playing it in short bursts, and the game really has to be designed for a better method of playing, i.e. a pad, a keyboard and mouse, rather than being simplified for a phone as well, right? So yeah, this is actually really interesting. As I say, we've got multiple articles. This one goes a little bit more into the game itself and talks about some of the Zhuhai festivals, I believe, and the advertisements and the marketing for the game. Just shy of $173 million. So yeah, just shy of $200 million that they've made within 2 weeks of the launch. These games print money, man. All we can ask for is Hypergryph. Slap it back into the game. Give us a good experience. And I'm sure that revenue will grow. But anyway, guys, if you enjoyed the video, let me know what you think down below. Subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you all in the next one. Get up.